year. Normally we just have a speaker once a year, but he has so much important information to tell us about with the fairgrounds that we asked him to come back. So with that, I introduce Geoff Hinds as our speaker today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to come back. Always enjoy the opportunity to come talk to Kiwanis, and certainly enjoy the opportunity to talk about what we do right across the street here at Deschutes County Fair and Expo. So I don't exactly remember what all I covered last time, so if I cover it again, my apologies. If you don't remember, you're welcome for covering it again, and hopefully we'll get into some new topics and certainly some updated information shared. Largely what I'm going to talk about today is kind of what we do on an annual basis at the facility at Deschutes County Fair and Expo. But before we get there, I'll talk a little bit about the property. Many of you probably know a lot of this, but Deschutes County Fair and Expo, again, right across the street. It's a 320-acre property. It makes it one of the largest facilities of its type, not only in the Northwest, but indeed in the country. We're in the process of working with Deschutes County, City of Redmond, State of Oregon, a whole bunch of other parties to potentially acquire another 140 acres, which would be the parcel sort of directly across from the golf course here. That would make it, as far as we know, the second largest facility of its type in the United States. So a pretty large facility here in our own backyard that gives us a lot of flexibility to do a lot of things. It's also got a lot of uniqueness. It's one of the only multi-purpose master plan facilities in the United States. It's probably one of the newest fairgrounds built. Most fairgrounds are not new. We have one that is, but if you're familiar, if you've been over to like Crook County or Jefferson County, or if you didn't grow up here in Deschutes County, your hometown fair probably is much more representative of what a traditional fair or fairground looks like in most communities. Most of them don't have a brand new facility that was opened less than 25 years ago, that was all purpose-built, that was all master plan, that was built and opened at one time. For example, the facility I came from before in Southern California, our newest building at the time was 40 years old. And here our oldest building is 25 years old, to give you an idea. So our newest there being almost twice as old as what our newest facility here is. So you've got a lot of opportunities there because of that. And certainly some challenges therein, but it gives us a lot of flexibility. And it was all designed and purpose-built for the opportunity to hold large and multi-purpose events on that property, and very well done. It was designed by a group that knows what they're doing, and that served us really well over the last about 24 years since it opened. It opened in summer of 1999, and really, we say 2000 by the time we kind of got up and running is when it opened. So, as I said, 320-acre facility, one of the largest in the Northwest. We offer a little bit over 300,000 square feet of indoor space that's usable. That's actually a little bit less. The First Interstate Bank Center, the big arena in the middle, it actually is 300,000 square feet of covered space on its own, plus 300,000 square feet of usable indoor event space across multiple different spaces. We have a small conference center up in the front. Many of you have probably been to maybe an event or an activity in one of those conference center buildings, middle, north, or south sister. That total conference center, when combined, is just under 40,000 square feet and can seat up to 2,000 people depending on the configuration. So a lot of flexibility in that space. We also have the First Interstate Bank Center, kind of in the middle of the facility. 4,000 fixed seats in that arena. It's the largest building or arena of its type this side of the Cascades. Scalable up over a lot more than 4,000. I'm not going to tell you how many we think can go in there with a fire marshal here. But there's about 4,000 of the permanent seats in the building, and scalable up over 10,000 in seating configurations for concerts, just depending on what we do in there with different mapping and stuff. So it's got a lot of flexibility. The arena floor there is 330 feet by 125 feet, so you actually could put a full-size NFL football field on that arena floor. We've never done it, but we could if you wanted to. It gives us a lot of opportunity to do a lot of neat events. If anybody comes out to what we're doing this weekend for High Desert Stampede Rodeo, you'll see the opportunity to have that rodeo. We have a much larger arena than most of the other indoor arenas in the United States, and it allows us a lot of flexibility to do some creative things in that arena for those events, or to do things that other facilities may not be able to. We can do full-size monster truck shows in there, arena cross, and a lot of other things that some of the smaller arena footprints maybe necessarily can't. We also have a small not small, we have a livestock equestrian complex. We have the ability to put 400 horse stalls on that property, and then we can add up to 200 more to get 600 horses on that property. We'll see that here in a few weeks for sanctuary barrel races, and then again in August for an event called Cascade Futurity. It's not uncommon for us to have 400, 500, or 600 horses on that property at any one time. We're home to the OSU Extension Office, for those of you who may be involved in some of their programs, including Master Gardeners and a bunch of the other OSU projects, as well as their 4-H office and several different gardens that are that are taken care of by that OSU team, and then a few others as well. And we're home to almost 400 unique event days annually, and I kind of listed a small list of those. Cascade Futurity Farewell Festival, USA BMX Northwest and Olympic qualifiers held here each year for USA BMX. Cascade Equinox, Overland Expo, Oregon State FFA Convention we just wrapped up, where all of the FFA students from across the state come here for a full convention. Sanctuary Barrel Races, which is coming up in a few weeks, Mount Bachelor Kennel Club, Gambler 500, a Desert Stampede, which is this weekend, Columbia River Circuit Finals, which is in October, Central Oregon Sportsman Show, and I could go on because there's only about 15 up there, and there's about 200 more to list. So we do a lot of stuff over the year. We do more than 400 event days a year because it's not unusual for us to have multiple events going on at any one time on the property. And that's one of the benefits of having a property that is so large and so diverse and so well designed, is at any one time we can do, we've done up to 11 unique events on that property at any single day. For example, this weekend, we do have High Desert Stampede, which is a big PRCA Pro Rodeo. It kicks off the rodeo circuit in the Northwest, and it takes up the entire arena and some space outside. We also have Central Oregon Ag Show using the conference center up on the front, and Western Marketplace out in the Coastal Pavilion, or High Desert Activity Center. So 3 big events going on at the same time, a very Western weekend this weekend. But it's not uncommon for us to work on synergies between like events to give people a good reason to show up and stay on property for as long as possible. Give you a reason to show up at 10 a.m. and not leave until 10 p.m. If possible. So really we just try to be a place for organizations, groups, individuals to come together and really celebrate while they're here. We also really try to be an economic driver for the community, and that's kind of what I'll talk about a little bit more today, is drive down deeper dive on the economic impact of what we do annually, just because especially with some of the new larger events, we've really started to see the impact of what we do on that facility and how it resonates without the community, and how that we play a large role in supporting the community, and why I think Redmond and certainly Central Oregon should be proud of what we have right here in our own backyard. So this gives you a snapshot of last year. So this is the 2023 calendar year. We did 196 unique events, so 196 contracts. Some of those contracts actually have multiple event days, so it's a little bit of a misnomer there. For 283 total event days last year, our event days are contracting. Right now we're doing less event days because we're doing larger events, and we don't have as many of those overlapping events. So when we said 400, it's shrunken down over the last several years because the size and scope of some of our events has grown over the last several years. So it's a little bit different. But we had 922,200 unique visitors onto the property next door last year, from January 1 to December 31st. Makes it one of the busiest visited facilities, not only in Redmond, but all of Central Oregon. In fact, there's only 2 facilities that we're aware of that we've been able to track that see more visitors a year. One is our neighbor, the airport. They get about 1.4, 1.5 million visitors a year. And the other one is Costco. Of that, we extrapolate that our total economic impact generated in calendar year 2023, sorry, years, I'm living in way too many calendar fiscal years right now because we're in budget season, so if I get my years wrong, I apologize. 2023 calendar year, our total estimated economic impact was $104,208,600. And you wonder how we come up with that number. And I'll show some other stuff. So Oregon and Visit Central Oregon and Travel Oregon use an economic impact multiplier that they utilize. They use a number of $286 per person for somebody who's a visitor. And a visitor is defined as somebody who comes for more than 50 air miles to a defined place of business and has an overnight stay, and there's some other stuff that goes in there. We don't use that number because we recognize that not all of our visitors, not all million people that are coming onto our property are meeting that definition. Although, I'll show you in a few minutes some of the metrics we use. About half of our visitors do. So we use a much smaller number. We use a number of $113 per person, which is based on a 2018 study done by Oklahoma State University. So we may be slightly out of date. There's been a little inflation since 2018. But we want to be conservative. And I'll be quite honest, the first time we ran it with the bigger number, with the $286 number, we didn't believe our own number. So we really scaled back and worked to find a number that was a little bit more believable. I want to pass out a study here in a minute that talks a little bit about another event that we did to talk a little bit about how some of these economic impact multipliers are generated for those that may be interested as well. So a little bit about who has come to the property. This is a chart. This gives you a little bit of an insight into how we measure who comes onto the property. Don't ask how we get this because you won't want to know. It's a little scary. And those that we tell really wish that we hadn't told them how we get it. But basically, if you have a cell phone, we're tracking you, and we know when you're on our property at any time. We don't know anything about you, but we know you've been on the property. So this was run, the dates January 1 through October 8th. I just grabbed one that was in my file. And you can see through that period, between January and October, we've had 840,700 unique visits. Also tells us how many of those were unique. So 330,000 unique visitors, meaning people come to that property more than once, often. Also tells us there are 2.5 visits per person. Also tells us how long you stay on the property. The average visit is 278 minutes, so over 4 hours. It means they stay on the property for a really long time. It means we're doing a decent job of getting you there at 10 a.m., keeping you there until 10 p.m. Or it says that our shows are doing a good job of being something that's quality and keeping people entertained and on the grounds while they're there. And we measure that to make sure that that what we're doing is resonant with those folks that are coming. And you can kind of see some of the growth. The year-over-year growth, or year-over-3-year growth is pretty impressive at 400%. But remember, that's back to 2020 when we had a pandemic, so it's a little misnomer, but I use that one just for fun. So this is a little bit about where our visitors come from, and when I said we kind of know that about half of our visitors come from about 50 air miles, this is a chart that shows where they are. You can kind of see the spikes where they are. So this is likely if you live in Redmond, this is likely if you live in Bend, and this is anybody who lives outside of the area. If you can't see the numbers, because this is 50 air miles here. This is about 30, and that's about 10. To give you an idea of how that chart comes together, and that all adds up to about 100%. But you can see that when you add that together, last year, 50.1% of our visitors onto the property were from more than 50 air miles away. And they came to us from all over, not only in the Northwest, but all over the United States, and indeed all over the world. We have certain shows that bring people from other countries here. Overland Expo is a great example. The world's largest outdoor travel adventure show. That's when they bring those weird outdoor adventure camping rigs that you see driving around, the Jeeps with stuff on top of them, all of that. But we get some visitors who drive those things from, well, they probably don't drive them from across overseas, but they get them here. In certain ways. We had some of those from Europe and from Africa and those sorts of places this last year. So we have a huge distance impact on where people are coming from. Give you an idea of what that looks like and why we think we should be really proud of what we have here in the community. This is a benchmark study against a couple other places that you may know in the community that kind of are regional destination places. We are the one here on your left, shows 840,000. One next to us is Mount Bachelor Ski Resort, kind of regarded as a pretty dynamic, pretty prominent visitor destination here in the Northwest, and they got about 716,000 visitors last year. And the next one is Hayden Homes Amphitheater, that small little concert thing that's a thorn in our side, down in Bend, that thinks they're really important, and you see they only got 300,000 visitors. So, don't tell them I said that. They have bigger budgets. Obviously, each of us play a unique role in the entertainment, in the visitor marketplace, in the community, and that sort of stuff. And all of us are work together, and so right? It's a friendly rivalry between all three, but we're really excited when we're able to outdraw some of those marquee places within the community. And I think really exciting to see that happening here in Redmond. When you have the two most visited places in the community right here side by side, that's pretty exciting, and for us to be able to out-earn those is pretty cool. The other thing that we kind of draw on, and I won't spend much time on this one, is just where our trade area comes from. This gives you an idea of where people come from to see stuff. Our circle is the big blue one. Mount Bachelor's is the small red one, and Hayden Homes is kind of that green one. So it's saying our trade area, where people are coming from at 74 miles, that's the average distance people are coming to visit us from. At 74 miles is the largest out of all of those properties. Obviously, there's a lot of factors that go into that. That's a very it's a lot of information done in there, but our trade area, because of the number of people where they're coming from, and the number of them that are coming from longer distances, really is a larger trade area, meaning we're driving a lot more visitorship into the community than maybe these other places are, or an outsized impact. I'm not saying we're drawing more, but we're drawing an outsized impact based on what it is that we do. So, pretty exciting what we do. I figured that I would also do a bit of an event snapshot. I kind of highlighted Overland Expo. I don't know if I printed enough. I'm going to go through a couple of case studies, but also this is a case study that's kind of hot off the press that's getting passed around. A few of you may have heard of Farewell Festival last year. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever. It was the big music festival in the middle of summer that we brought aboard last year for the first time. And it's coming back this year in July as well. This is a study that they commissioned to put together with an economic impact study for that festival, done by Live Nation C3, the biggest concert promoter in the world. And this is the information that they shared with us as far as what they think their economic impact is. Now, one thing that I think is really interesting in this is their impact from that they use all these economists and all these fancy people that do this for a living say that the economic impact from this 3-day festival actually exceeds the number that we say we do on an entire year. So again, we may be slightly small on our number, but we're trying to be conservative, and we're really excited to start to get data like this that really informs what we do. So it also kind of shares why we do some of that stuff and why that's kind of our new target direction, why we're kind of going out into those marketplaces. Yeah, it's a bit of a disruption for those of us that might live here for a period, but it provides an outsized economic impact on a year-round basis for a ton of businesses, especially hoteliers, restaurants, purveyors, all that sort of stuff. And it really talks about that kind of stuff. It also creates a lot of jobs here in the community. It's kind of interesting that those 3 days can end up generating positions throughout the entirety of the year, but ultimately it truly does. So while that's going around, the other one I'll highlight on is Overland Expo, just because I think it's kind of fun to talk about some of these events that have an impact and what we see on an annual basis. This event is coming up in June this year. It'll be our third time doing it. It's the world's largest travel adventure show. It's one of the largest shows we do on the property. It's 400 vendors spread out across the entirety of the property. They're bringing $4 million camping vehicles and all kinds of crazy stuff, and adventure travel expos, people who teach you how to drive on off-road courses that they build out there. These photos didn't show it very well, I apologize. You're getting to see all kinds of brand new technology, all that kind of stuff. The first year they did it, they unveiled a brand new vehicle here in partnership with GMC, unveiled a brand new pickup truck on site in Central Oregon. Very cool, and got to be involved. We were listed in a bunch of national publications, Motor Trend and all that sort of stuff, because that vehicle was unveiled here on our property.
Which was it that they unveiled?
The GMC AV something. It's red. If you're really interested, I can give you the information. I don't remember off the top. Last year they brought their brand new Hummer and they unveiled the scaled down. What's the smaller? The Canyon? Is that the small version? So 2 years ago they unveiled the big one, the full-size 4-door, fully outfitted off-road version. Last year they unveiled the Hummer, brought one of the first public views of the Hummer, and then that small scaled down Canyon version. You get about 26,000. Yeah.
Could you talk me through that highest? I can't make out what's going on there.
Here? Or here?
No, right there.
Right there?
What your finger is on. Is that a travel trailer or what?
So that is a truck, or that's an SUV. That's probably a 4Runner. or something, like what Chris drives.
Okay.
But it's got a lot of stuff on it and around it and in it.
That's
So
what I
that's a
can
4Runner that's upfitted so that you can go spend probably 2 weeks out in the wilderness and live off grid. It's got a tent on top. It's got extra tires. It's probably got a water system. It's got lithium battery backups, jacks to get out of trouble, towing rigs, all that, food and storage, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's just got a ton of stuff in
So
there.
it's hard to see.
Yeah, it's a really, the photo didn't translate very well when I saved it onto this flash drive, so I apologize. That event, 26,600 total event visits, 17,000 unique attendees. 75% of those visitors came from more than 100 miles away. 42 from more than 250 miles away. Gives you the idea of the reach of a show of that size. 395 registered exhibitors or different booths, everything from GMC, Rivian, all of those companies, down to the guys who make things as small as a single bolt that you might need in order to be able to spend 2 weeks out in the wilderness and make sure your car is going to stay together. 130 presenters, trainers, and instructors. Some of those are world-renowned. 50 different journalists attended that show. And attendees from 46 states, as well as Canada, Australia, Ireland, Germany, United Kingdom, and Puerto Rico. And that show has about a $7 million economic impact using that multiplier that we utilized. So that's one weekend of what we do. And then I'm going to kind of flip and talk about another event we do, and I'm only going to talk about 3 case studies here, the one that went around, and then these 2. This is Gambler 500. This is kind of the flip side, the opposite of Overland Expo. Overland Expo is $4 million rigs where you can go live off grid and not have to talk to people for a very long time. Gambler 500 is people who build $500 cars and probably shouldn't talk to people. They're just a completely different group of people, but they have a great time. They come out, they camp on site out in our back parking lot, and then they go around in the community and they pick up trash. And that's their goal. It's a point-to-point trash pickup. It's a creative way to get approval through BLM and some of the other groups to be able to do what they do, which is this grouping of people is that they're out there providing a community service. But the first year, last year, they picked up 427,000 pounds of trash removed from local forests. Everything, you can kind of see a pile of it here. Everything from RVs, trailers, cars, boats, to small trash and stuff. It all gets brought to the fairgrounds, cleaned up, sorted, and sent off to the dump as best as we can. So 98% of those visitors come from more than 50 miles away. Apparently we don't want to pick up our own trash here. But actually Gambler 500 started in Oregon, and it's a worldwide kind of phenomenon now that people go do. It's just a fun weekend where people can go do weird, crazy things. You see some of the vehicles they drive, and if you have seen in June of each year, you'll see a bunch of them come around town, and you see these weird vehicles driving around. That's what they're here for. So they're having a good time camping in the back, being a little bit crazy, but out there providing a good community service as well. But this also got us articles in national publications, including Car and Driver, Outside Magazine, and a lot more. This show's been featured on Jay Leno when that was a TV show, and some others. So a lot of opportunity for Central Oregon to really get on the map, but also a huge public service in providing that almost a lot of trash pickup in the community. Obviously a lot more out there, but they do a great job. And people from 20 different states, coast to coast. So it just gives kind of an idea of a couple of the different events of what we've got. You see some of the articles and stuff here in the pictures of what it is that we do. So I'll put this up on the screen. This is kind of what we have coming up. This is our month of April and May. This is an idea of what our calendar looks like, which is not uncommon, of the number and types of events that we have going on. Everything from High Desert Stampede to an ADA conference, and 4-H events and all kinds of private events. There's the events on here really run the gamut. So this is what our calendar looks like for the next 2 months. An opportunity to come visit us for a lot of these that are public events as well. So, and then talk about the future real quick. I'm going to start with that. I'm getting close. The future. I talked about that 140 acres that we're working to acquire. That'll give us 460 total acres of potential space that we're working to figure out what we're going to do with. Because about 200 acres of our current property and that 140 new acres are undeveloped or semi-developed. So we're trying to figure out what to do that. So we're in the process of doing outreach for master planning. where we're going to bring in a group or firms that design facilities for a living, because it's one of the largest developable types of property in the Northwest and in the area that can be utilized in this creative way, in an entertainment arts community hub. And we want to make sure that what we design and develop out there is going to be representative not just of what the community needs today, but what the community needs in 50 and 100 years, right? We want to make sure that the facility that we leave behind and our team leaves behind when it's our time to turn the keys over to our successors is as good or better than it was when I picked up the keys today. And that's by understanding what the community is. So we're not developing what the community wants today. If we were developing what the community wanted today, we'd build a lot of pickleball courts. And in 50 years, that may not be what it needs. It might be, but it might not. So we're going to really look and talk to a lot of stakeholders to find out what the community wants today, extrapolate what that's going to look like into the future, and design and come up with some really cool strategies for what the rest of that property could look like, and maybe some adjustments to the existing property, and also understand as the community changes, right? The airport's going to continue to expand and grow. At some point, we hope 19th Street has an extension down and connects into 97, and really that'll change the way we utilize and do business, and we need to understand that, be prepared for that as well. Not just for, one, it'll impact the way we operate for the best days of summer, those 5 days of the year when we do the annual fair and rodeo, that we hope everybody will come out to, July 31st or August 4th, but also all these other events that come throughout the rest of the year, and all of the new events that we haven't had the opportunity to yet bring to Central Park. So that's kind of what we're working on. We actually did a walkthrough yesterday with firms from all over the country that are going to bid on that project, and we're excited to see what those bids look like here in about a month or so. And a really exciting time, and about this time next year, we'll be able to talk a little bit about what that process is looking like.
Would that be a bond measure if you guys went to get that, or?
That's I don't know. We don't have the money to fully build it out, right? I mean, to build out 460 acres is, on the conservative estimate, like $1 billion project, and we don't have $1 billion, unfortunately. I don't think we could bond $1 billion either. So I don't think that we're designing. The concept is to plan it so we know what will go where, and then figure out strategies for what comes next. So it's possible down the road there could be some bonding measures that we would come back and talk to the voters about if the interest seems to be there. We've also had discussions that there could be public-private partnerships, that there could be public-public partnerships. There could be different opportunities to figure out how to get there. We hate to go back to the taxpayer and ask for more money, unless we obviously have something that we really believe makes a lot of sense and that we think the community really is invested in, and we'll serve that as well. So I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. There's a lot more work between now and then.
Are there enough hotel accommodations for your visitors?
No. No, Redmond does not have enough hotel hotel beds. We have about, I think it's about 700 or so rooms in Redmond right now. I think there's more hopefully coming online here in the not too distant future. And that helps us. Bend has a larger base. They have about 2,400. But for some of our larger shows, it's not uncommon for us to sell out every hotel room. For example, for July for Farewell Festival, if you were to go try to find a hotel room, the cheapest room we found, we just check every now and then, the cheapest room we found in the entire market was $283. And that was one room. And that was, I think, at the local Motel 6. That was the only room available in Redmond. And in Bend, the cheapest room was $358. So there's just not enough rooms for some of those larger events. We just have this outsized impact when we're doing large events and bringing a huge number of people into the community. The other problem is we quickly, it's important, the number of rooms in Redmond is important to us because it's 700. We quickly sell those out for a lot of events, probably 20 times a year or more. And what we do is prices increase and we push everybody off into Bend, which is fine, but then their prices increase and lodging in this market is tight anyways because of the visitorship coming from out of the region. So there's just, the simple answer is no.
Is that 400 some acres you're looking into, is that where the potential sports complex would go? Or
Yes.
is that a separate piece of ground?
No, that would be part of that complex, yeah. So that's, and that's kind of a great conversation. That's a whole different conversation. I could spend a whole meeting talking about that, and maybe they'd come and talk to you. That is exactly what we want, is we want the community to come tell us what it wants to see as part of the community, so we can identify what we put on that property. So it very likely has an opportunity to become part of that master plan, but that's a separate group that's working on that project that will inform our decision making moving forward. And it ultimately may not be on our property because they could find something else at some other point. But we want the community to tell us what it wants, and that's a great example of a certain subset doing that.
How many facilities for RVs do you have on your grounds?
So we have the RV park right across the street has 105 spaces that are there. Those are the permanent spaces that we have. We have others that are temporary that we can ramp up. We can put up to 10,000 RVs on the property itself. For those of you that have been here 20 years or so, you might remember Family Motor Coach Association several years ago. That brought 10,000 different RVs onto the property. So we have 105 permanent, but we can scale that up to about 10,000.
Jeff, do you have a few minutes to stay
Yeah, I'll
after?
stay after for a few
Sounds
minutes,
like we're at 1 o'clock, so we need to get going. But if Jeff will stay, feel free to ask him a few more questions. And I think we may have given you one of these before, but you can never run low. All right. Thank you. Thank you. So much good information. We could be here all day, you guys. But in honor of Jeff and his team's wonderful ideas, great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, small minds discuss people. Eleanor Roosevelt. And we are adjourned.